President of the Kenosha Professional Police Association, Pete Dietz.
Morning. Doing the job of a police officer can be difficult and dangerous, but most of us knew that when we signed up to take this job. What we didn't expect is when the leaders of our country jump on the side of the people committing crimes and supporting them. In 2020, Kamala Harris encouraged people to donate their money to a fund in Minnesota to help those arrested during the riots in Minneapolis so they could bond out of jail. To us, that's just totally unacceptable. Kenosha has always been a blue-collar city. The unions that were in town for years helped the middle class and helped Kenosha become what it is today. Unfortunately, the policies that have been in place under the Biden-Harris administration have been crushing the middle class. From the millions of illegal immigrants crossing our borders to what they like to call Bidenomics, are making it harder and harder for the middle class to thrive in this country. Our goal as law enforcement officers is to provide a safe community for all. We know a healthy economy reduces the strain on American workers, and that is essential in our mission of lowering crime. However, today prices are higher than ever at the grocery stores, and interest rates are soaring because of Bidenomics. Again, to us, that is just not acceptable. President Trump has proven he stands with law enforcement, and we are confident President Trump and Senator J.D. Vance will continue to have our backs. And that is exactly why the Board of Directors of the Kenosha Professional Police Association are proud to endorse President Trump and Senator J.D. Vance.
Join me in welcoming Kenosha County Sheriff David Zorner.
Thank you all for being here today. Thank you all for being here today. No one's ever accused me of being too quiet. I stand before you today not just as a sheriff, but as a member of this community. I'm deeply invested in the safety and the well-being of everyone here. Our law enforcement officers are more than just uniforms. You see them lining the streets behind us. Let me just tell you how proud I am to work with these men and women. They're not just uniforms. They're more than that. They're your neighbors. They're your friends. They're your family. They're the men and women who answer the call day and night to keep you safe, protect and serve this community, and take care of your families, my family. They do this with courage and dedication. I'm sure most of you live in this community, and you're no stranger to the headlines of the past couple years. We have been blessed with responses from these heroes time and time again. It's time to invest in our public safety. It's more important than ever that we stand together. Our officers face tremendous pressures. They ensure every citizen feels secure and valued. Officers want the community that they serve to believe in the work that they do. We're all here to protect the vulnerable, uphold the law, and ensure justice for everyone. We cannot do it alone. We can't. I'm proud to have the support of Congressman Stile as a sergeant and now as a sheriff. He has been there for us with the unique needs of the 1st District in Washington at the federal level, fighting for all of his constituents and always fighting for law enforcement. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Locally, we need to work towards trust and cooperation with everyone. This is the only chance we have to end violence in our community, to end reckless behavior that puts our families at risk. You see it all the time on the roads. This behavior puts our families in harm's way. We need to work to end the theft of our belongings and our property. Property crimes are rampant. And if you know anything about my administration, you know this one resonates with me, and I hope it resonates with you. To end drug dealers' access to our children. That's right. When we all stand together with law enforcement, we stand for safety, justice, and the rule of law. Stand for a community where everyone can live without fear. Everyone deserves to feel safe in their community. That's why I'm here today. This is always my message, and it's the message of the men and women of the Sheriff's Office, Kenosha Professional Police Association, KPD. We all work together. Actually, the Chief of Police and myself are missing a meeting right now with law enforcement leaders because it was scheduled before we scheduled this meeting. And we work so well together. I'm so proud to be part of that group. Thank you so much. That is a big part of what we do. So I ask you to stand today with me for a community where everyone can live without fear. So join us in our mission. Build a community where laws are upheld. Every citizen feels safe and secure and valued. We are all part of this community. I was born and raised here, as many of you were. I'm proud to be here, and I am honored to be the sheriff of this community. So as I step off the stage, I'm going to ask you a favor. Share my words. Share this message with your friends, your family, your coworkers. Talk about it. This is how we do it together. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is a candidate for the U.S. Senate in Wisconsin. Please welcome Eric Hovde.
We're here today to talk about domestic security because we all want to live in safe communities. It's important to the fabric of our society because what happened 4 years ago, and just in a few days, August 23rd, lit the flames that burned Kenosha down. Well, I think it's important to look at the record between President Trump and Kamala Harris and what Senator Baldwin has brought. You know, it's interesting. I turned on the television last night to watch the DNC convention. And I saw constant speakers repeating that she was tough on crime. Kamala Harris was going to provide security to this country. I think it's very important to walk through her record. So Kamala Harris's first important role was DA of San Francisco, which she took over in January of 2004 and served until 2011. Now, anybody that knows about San Francisco, it was considered maybe the most beautiful city in our country and brought visitors from all over the world and all over the country to that wonderful city. But you know, in those 7 years, the city started its deep slide, and business associations, trade associations, groups like the doctors told the city if they didn't stop the crime wave, they wouldn't have their conventions there anymore. So the city of San Francisco declined and crime rose. Kamala Harris failed in that role. Kamala Harris then took over as AG of the whole state of California in 2011 and served in that role in 2007. Now, what happened during that time frame in California? Well, not only did San Francisco continue to decline, but Los Angeles started its big decline. Sanctuary cities, homelessness, drug addiction, all rose significantly, as did human and sex trafficking. California became less safe. So Kamala Harris failed in that position. Kamala Harris then became a U.S. Senator in 2017. She was voted the most liberal senator in the U.S. Senate. Well, we all know that sad day that happened with George Floyd, that then ended up burning down the city of Minneapolis, which Governor Walz allowed to occur. And what did Senator Harris do, as well as Senator Baldwin? They fanned the flames. They attacked the police and all of law enforcement and pushed defund the police. And it resulted in the tragedy that happened here in Kenosha, but all over our country. My city of Madison, they destroyed all of State Street, that wonderful street that runs from our state capitol down to our university. So they failed in that role. As you can tell, she has a history of failure. Then Senator Harris becomes vice president. And what is her chief task she is given? To be the border czar. Now, what is the term czar? That means all-powerful. You're the one that gets to make all the decisions. And what occurred on our border? Under President Trump, the last year, a little over 300,000 illegal border crossings occurred. The first year, under Kamala Harris being the border czar, over 3 million illegal immigrants entered our country. Second year, again, more than 3 million illegal immigrants. Third year, well over 4 million illegal immigrants. The low estimate is 10 million, but if you talk to sheriffs on the border, they will tell you it's more like 13 to 16 million illegal immigrants that have come over. Now, I call it the rotten onion, our open border. Now, why would I call it such a term as a rotten onion? Because what does an onion have? It has many layers to it. Let's walk through the layers of how our open border has hurt this country and our domestic security. First, we're already having a hard time in this country providing affordable housing and health care to our own citizens. And when you pour over 10 to 16 million people, you're only compounding that problem. And by the way, because the Democratic Party doesn't seem to understand economics, there is no such thing as a free lunch. So when they're using our healthcare system and paying nothing into it, that means all the cost gets transferred to all of us, including you and the press. So that's the first problem that this illegal immigration wave has started. The second is crime. The press doesn't want to cover all the incidences today like they were for a while because that was causing great blowback on the Democratic Party. Sadly, we just had an illegal immigrant here in the state of Wisconsin kill his own 2 children 2 weeks ago. But it's almost every single week you would hear another tragic story. My oldest daughter went to Athens, Georgia, a very safe community, and when that young girl was killed by an illegal immigrant in Athens, that kind of brought to forelight what was happening in our country. Then you had the mother of 5 out for a jog in Maryland, or the young 12-year-old girl in Houston, Texas that was strangled and raped and thrown into the river. But those stories just keep coming. So our societies, our communities have been made less safe by this illegal immigrant wave. Third layer of this problem is the risk of terrorism. they've caught approximately 350 people on the terrorist watch list. Now, that's what they've caught. How many have actually entered that are on a terrorist watch list? 5 times that amount? 7, 8, 10? We don't know. We do know that FBI Director Wray has put us on heightened risk and threat watch for a major terrorist incident. So again, weakening our security. Now let's talk about maybe the most heartbreaking layer of this onion, and that is the fentanyl crisis. We lost 108,000 Americans last year, 112,000 the year before. We have been losing over 100,000 Americans in this country to that poison that's created in China, brought over to the drug cartels in Mexico, and brought up into our country through our open southern border. And Kamala Harris and Senator Baldwin have done nothing about that issue. It's the #1 leading cause of death of 18 to 45-year-olds. It's affecting every community all over this country and has hit this state incredibly hard. Now let's get to the very last nugget of this rotten onion that they have provided in the open border. They've created a human tragedy. They can't account for almost 100,000 children. Now, through my foundation, I have been fighting against sex trafficking, and I have homeless shelters for street kids around the world, 5 in Central and South America. Thank you. Thank you. And I've been fighting sex trafficking hard in this country for over a decade. And I sadly can assure you, far too many of those children have ended up in the sex trade. That is the consequences of this open southern border. So for her being the border czar, I'd give her an F on that one too. One failure after another failure after another failure after another failure. And Senator Baldwin is no better. She has voted for this progressive leftism, radicalism, every step of the way. Voted with Joe Biden 95.5% of the time. And she runs ads acting like she's done something on fentanyl. She has done nothing on fentanyl. So, where is our country today? It has been made less safe, less secure. We need change. Now, we've got a perfect trifecta. The most liberal senator voted Kamala Harris, Governor Walz, who let his major city burn, who's considered the most liberal governor, and Senator Tammy Baldwin, who is voted the second most liberal senator and has been nothing but a progressive rubber stamp for the progressive left. I'll tell you, that's a perfect trifecta of radical liberal crazies. Now, they're going to try to spin their goods. The question is, are the press going to allow them? You know their record. Every one of it. You know what they've done and what they failed to do. So I believe in the people of this country. I believe in the people of Wisconsin. We can turn this country around, and it's time to restore our safety and America. Thank you.
He is a member of the United States House of Representatives, representing Wisconsin's 1st Congressional District since 2019. Please welcome Brian Stile.
Good morning. On my drive into Kenosha this morning, I had a lot of thoughts, a lot of reflections and a lot of memories about what was here 4 years ago. 4 years ago this week. This last weekend, I was at the Kenosha County Fair a great celebration of family and friends from across the county. The other day I was downtown Kenosha, a few blocks from here, grabbing lunch with friends. Kenosha is a spectacular community, a community of hard work, of families, of faith, a community that you would love to call home. But 4 years ago, this week, that wasn't the case. As I came in and saw the law enforcement who are surrounding us here today, it brought back memories of a darker time. I talked with a police officer as I came in who had been on the force at that time for 4 years, graduate of Kenosha Bradford High School. And we reflected back on the challenge that he and others faced. I remember talking to a sheriff's deputy from a county next door, who came and assisted the men and women of law enforcement here in Kenosha. She woke up that morning not knowing that her duty would be to come to Kenosha. And by the end of the night, she had been hit by a brick thrown by a rioter. I remember talking to a police officer who had to call his wife and say, I don't know when I'll be home because we don't have the resources to control what's occurring here in our community of Kenosha. I remember talking to a nurse who's at the hospital about 5 blocks down. She called me at 2 a.m. And she said, Brian, I don't know how I'm going to get home. And I said, I don't have a way to assist you. I remember talking to men and women who called 911. And they said, Brian, when I called 911, they asked me on the phone, has anyone been seriously injured or killed? And when they said no, they said, we don't have the resources to send an officer to your house to make sure you're safe. The night after the incident, Democratic Governor Tony Evers would send a paltry 125 National Guard members to the community of Kenosha. Woefully inadequate. After the second night of rioting, as I had slept for about 2 to 3 hours, which was 2 to 3 more than I think almost every law enforcement officer in the whole entire county of Kenosha slept that night, and countless community members who were petrified of what was occurring in their community. I put out a statement that said, Governor Evers, if you don't feel you have the resources to make sure that Kenosha is safe, call me, because I stand willing to reach out to the President of the United States to make sure that we do have the resources in the community of Kenosha. But ultimately, get a hold of the President of the United States that day, President Donald Trump. And I spoke with President Trump about what was taking place here, and asked him if he would provide resources to the community of Kenosha, to the state of Wisconsin, to reestablish public safety. Because everybody has a right and deserves to feel safe in our community, absolutely everyone. During that conversation, he said, Brian, your governor hasn't called me. And I said, Mr. President, I can't explain that, but I can tell you, you have a huge opportunity here to help. In particular, bring federal law enforcement agents from the city of Kenosha, or from the city of Chicago, up to the city of Kenosha. The President of the United States, following that conversation, agreed. He called the governor's office and offered assistance. The President would leave the voicemail for the governor, and the governor would put back out a statement saying that he did not need federal assistance, but he would like assistance to assist with a response to COVID-19. Woefully inadequate. That evening, That evening, bad went to worse. And a few blocks from here, 2 individuals would ultimately lose their lives. It didn't have to be that way. The next morning, Governor Evers would recant and change his tune. President Trump would work to provide federal law enforcement assistance into the community of Kenosha. Kenosha Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, and all law enforcement officers were here, began to take action. And the riots subsided. It shows you the importance of standing with the men and women of law enforcement, and it shows the importance of making sure the men and women of law enforcement have the resources they need to be able to do their job to keep all of us safe. During that summer, and in particular in Wisconsin on that first night, people made statements that fanned the flames. We saw that through numerous elected leaders here in the state of Wisconsin. Some so much so that law enforcement organizations put forward statements requesting our governor and others not even comment about what was occurring in Kenosha. Think about that for a minute. Law enforcement organizations were asking our elected leaders to stop commenting because their comments were fanning the flames of criminal activity here in our community. When I spoke to President Trump that day, I knew President Trump stood with the men and women of law enforcement. And as we look around in pretty much every direction, you see members of local law enforcement, in particular the Kenosha Police Department and Kenosha Sheriff's Department. And can you join me in giving them a big round of applause to say thank you for what you do every single day on our behalf? This November, in 11 weeks, there's a big choice before us. And to me, that choice is clear. And if you look at the record of Vice President Harris and Governor Walz, it's pretty clear. Just as we experienced here firsthand in the community of Kenosha, we can look to our neighboring state in Minnesota. And just like we had here, you have a governor that failed to provide the resources that were needed to keep his community safe. Failed to stand with the men and women of law enforcement so that they could do their job. And during that period of time, Vice President Harris would encourage individuals to make donations to bail individuals out of jail who had been arrested for rioting. The consequence of that action is those men and women who were arrested for illegal behavior were immediately back on the streets. And it's clear what the consequences of that is. This election is a choice between those leaders, J.D. Vance, President Trump, who stand with the men and women of law enforcement, and those leaders, Governor Walz, Vice President Harris, who took the side of the criminals who are engaged in illegal behavior across the country. This is our opportunity to make sure that our communities are safe, to stand with the men and women of law enforcement, and to keep our communities safe. And so to everyone here, thanks for coming out. I thank Senator J.D. Vance for coming to the community of Kenosha to speak about the importance of public safety in a place where 4 years ago we needed it more than ever. And I in particular thank the men and women of law enforcement, those who are here with us today and those all across our state and across our country who wake up in the morning, put a badge over their heart, walk out the door knowing they're going to answer the call on our behalf, but not knowing what the call may be. And may that call never be as dark as it was 4 years ago, here today. but we know that we back the badge. Thank you all. God bless.
United States Senator J.D. Vance.
Guys, hey, how you guys doing? Wow, it is great to be here in Kenosha. Thank you. This is actually my second trip. I came. A good Marine Corps buddy of mine is from this area. Got married in Kenosha, and my second time here. We got some relatives over here. God bless you guys. Good to see you all. Well, we're here to celebrate law enforcement and to celebrate, more importantly, the good job that they do and how it benefits every single person in our community. And I think, unfortunately, we have a very stark contrast between two approaches to police and two approaches to public safety in this race. We have Vice President Kamala Harris, who's really the acting president, because, we know Joe Biden isn't home, so somebody's calling the shots, and I guess it's Kamala. And what we have in Kamala Harris is a person who has said that she wants to defund the police. Do we want to defund the police out there? This is a person who wants to change the laws around violent criminals so that people who commit sex crimes with minors would not be categorized as violent offenders. Do we think that's a good idea? No, absolutely not. It's not a good idea. Now, by contrast, we have President Donald J. Trump, who supported police, who backed the blue, and who made it easier for police to do their jobs. And remember, this is not just about making it easy on our police. That's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that when we make it easy on police, we make it so that every child in America has access to a basic right, which is public safety in their neighborhoods. And ladies and gentlemen, I grew up in a family that did not have a whole lot of money, that often had we had sometimes a rough neighborhood. But we were lucky enough to grow up in a country that believed that public safety was the birthright of every American citizen, rich or poor, and we supported our police in carrying out that mission of public safety. I remember, actually, I think I was probably 11 or 12 years old, and my mom struggled with addiction, and she was having a particularly tough episode, and I called the local police in Middletown, Ohio. And I remember they showed up, and they took care of my mom, and they made a little kid who was terrified of what was going on in his home, they made that little kid feel safe. And I think about what situation would I have been in, and what situation our country would be in if we take away every child's right to public safety. And that's unfortunately what the Democratic leadership is proposing in this country. You know how bad it's been the last few years? Have you seen the data on murder rates, on violent crime rates? You know that the gross majority now of violent crimes in this country go unsolved. So if, God forbid, you were assaulted in your own community, it's much more likely today that that crime will go unsolved, that they'll never catch the person who did it. That is because of the leadership of our vice president. Now she wants to be promoted to President of the United States, and I think we're all going to say absolutely not. Kamala Harris, we're going to fire Kamala Harris in November, and we're going to bring back Donald J. Trump. Now, before I move on here, I want to bring up a couple of folks, a couple of great public servants here in the state of Wisconsin. And by the way, we're going to win Wisconsin in November. I feel as confident about it as I ever have been. And you guys are going to make it happen. But I want to have just a couple of people say a few things here. And I'm going to start here with Pete Dietz, the president of the Kenosha Professional Police Association. I'd love, Pete, if you would come and say just a few words about what's going on here today. Where's Pete? There he is. All right, Pete, come on up here. All right, everybody, please give a round of applause for Pete Dietz.
Well, I'm not going to give my speech again. He'll have to check it out on the TV. But the Board of Directors of the Kenosha Professional Police Association are proud to endorse President Donald Trump and Senator J.D. Vance.
When Pete walked up here, he said, "I just saw you in Milwaukee," and I said, "Yeah, I remember that. I basically live in Wisconsin now. I don't know if you guys figured that out." So you'll be seeing a lot. You'll be seeing a lot of me over the next few months. But Pete, thank you so much for your support. I'd like to have. We'll see about that, sir. I'd like to call up Congressman Brian Stiles. Congressman Brian, where are you at? Out there. There we are. So Brian, I'm gonna give him a round of applause. I appreciate it. But Brian wrote a really, really good article about what happened in Kenosha in 2020. Really opened my eyes. Brian, thank you for your leadership and service.
Senator, thank you. Senator Vance, thanks for coming to Kenosha today. As we talked about earlier, the importance of standing with the men and women of law enforcement could not be more important than when we're standing here in the city of Kenosha. As we saw 4 years ago this week, what happens when elected leaders refuse to stand with the men and women of law enforcement? And we saw in great contrast what happens when leaders like President Trump answer the call and stand with the men and women of law enforcement and bring public safety to our community, right? And as we look around, I think it's really important that we say thank you once again to all the men and women of law enforcement from the Kenosha Police Department, Kenosha Sheriff's Department, and other law enforcement agencies that are with us here today. Because President Trump, because J.D. Vance, because we back the badge. Senator Vance, thanks for coming to Wisconsin. We still have time to make you a Packers fan. Thank you. God bless. God bless America.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, we got some Chicago fans out there too. Wow. All right. We're gonna have some conflict, some civil strife here. Not today. We're all here to support the police, whatever our sports allegiance is. And finally, I want to get a great future colleague in Washington, a guy who built a business in Wisconsin, who has served the people of this state in the private sector, and is now crazy enough to want to serve in the public sector, the great Eric Hovde, the next senator from the state of Wisconsin. Eric, come on up here.
Well, as I walk through, Kamala Harris has failed at every single role that she played, from state AG or DA for San Francisco, or as senator pushing the dumbest idea, defund the police, and now as vice president and opening our southern border. Look, as I said, we all want to live in safe communities. And you could not get a more distinct difference between these two sides. The radical, leftist, Kamala Harris, Governor Walz, and Senator Tammy Baldwin, or President Trump, J.D. Vance, and Eric Hovde. And we are going to back law enforcement. And let me tell you, anybody that doesn't, my wife has a great line: walk a day in their shoes. They go out every day to defend our communities, defend you, put risk of their own personal safety. So walk a day in their shoes. I support law enforcement. President Trump, J.D. Vance will always have your back. And we will never incorporate such a crazy idea as defund the police. So let's restore our safety, bring back this wonderful country, and thank you, Vice President, soon to be Vice President Vance.
All right, so I want to take a few questions from the press, but before I do, let me just try to bring this home here because it is very easy and very fun to criticize the record of Kamala Harris, but we also have to remind ourselves that we don't just have a vision on the Trump campaign. We don't just have a bunch of promises on the Trump campaign. We have got 4 years of Donald Trump's successful leadership that brought public safety to our streets, and that is something to celebrate and look forward to. So here is President Trump's solemn promise to our law enforcement community and all of us who benefit from their sacrifices and their public safety. It is simple. We are going to end sanctuary cities in this country. We're going to bring back pro-law enforcement cities. We are going to deport the violent, illegal aliens that have come into this country over the last few years. No more free rides, no more amnesty. We're going to support the death penalty for drug dealers because they kill far more people than some of the most violent and vicious criminals. We have got to have real penalties for people who are killing our kids and poisoning our communities. We're going to protect police from frivolous lawsuits. You hear President Trump talk about that. The reason that it's so hard for the police to do their job sometimes is they know if they do their job, they're going to get sued for it. We're going to protect them from those lawsuits and make it easier for our police to do their jobs. And finally, we're going to stand up to soft on crime prosecutors. If a police officer does their job and brings in a bad guy, we need some prosecutors who actually lock those people up and put them behind bars. It's common sense. All this stuff is just simple common sense. Now, we know what happens when we don't have leadership who support our law enforcement. We saw it in Kenosha just a few years ago. You all know this better than I do, that 4 years ago, Kenosha had terrible riots after a police shooting. And who was it? Who was the president of the United States that promised that he would send in law enforcement if asked? That was Donald Trump. Who was it that pacified the streets of Wisconsin and ensured that those riots didn't spiral out of control and burn down the entire city? That was President Donald J. Trump. And of course, we know the governor didn't initially want the support from President Trump, but after a couple days of those riots, he relented and did the smart thing and allowed President Trump to send federal support. Without that, I really think that Kenosha would still be recovering from those terrible riots today. But today, look, we're in a beautiful place, and it's a beautiful town, and we can thank President Trump's leadership and also the law enforcement who did their jobs and did it well. God bless you guys. Thank you so much. Now, I will always have the back of law enforcement. Let's bring up our reporters here to ask some questions. I will always have the backs of law enforcement. I will always support our police officers because I know what it's like, again, to be a kid who can't even believe and can't even rely on public safety. I want every single child in this country, whether they're rich or poor, whether they grow up on the right side of the tracks or the wrong side of the tracks, every child deserves to have public safety, and that's what we're going to do when Donald J. Trump is president. God bless you guys. Thank you all for coming out. Semper Fi, thank you to these great public servants. Let's get Eric Hovde across the finish line, and let's make this country great again. God bless you guys. And what I'll do here is I'd love to start out, thank you, ma'am. I'd love to start out with local Wisconsin reporters and take a few questions from the local reporters. And then if we've got time afterwards, we'll take some questions from the national folks. So if you're a local reporter, please raise your hand. Ma'am?
Hi, Senator. Thank you for your time. It's Mary Jo Ola with TMJ4 News here in Milwaukee. You were just in Milwaukee a few days ago, now in Kenosha. Can you just talk about how much of a priority Wisconsin is to the Trump campaign and where are you headed next in Wisconsin?
Well, look, I just like Wisconsin a lot, right? So I'm going to spend a lot of time with you fine people. But obviously, politically, Wisconsin may be very well the most important state in the country come November. And we believe that. We know that. All the polling says it. But most of all, you feel it on the ground. Look, Wisconsin is a state that I think has really suffered from two failures of the Kamala Harris presidency, vice presidency. The first is Wisconsin is a great and proud manufacturing state with a lot of skilled craftsmen and a lot of people who work with their own hands, make things with their own hands, and they know that with Kamala Harris's policies that raise the cost of energy, you're shipping a lot of good manufacturing jobs off to China. President Trump and I believe we ought to keep those manufacturing jobs right here in Wisconsin. Let's do it with Wisconsin workers, and let's produce prosperity for the whole country. And the second thing is, you saw it with the riots in Kenosha in the summer of 2020. Wisconsin has suffered when you don't have good, smart, pro-public safety leadership. And that's what Donald Trump and I want to bring back to the White House is back in the blue, supporting our police officers and making sure that public safety is the birthright of every American citizen. I think that message, that shared economic and public safety message, is going to bring Wisconsin home to Republicans in 2024, and it's going to make Donald Trump the President of the United States again. So, yes, it's very important. I also say, when my kids came up here for the RNC convention 4 or 5 weeks ago, the one place they really wanted to go was the Cheese Castle. So, if you've all, how many of you have been to the Cheese Castle? All right, good. So my kids have been to the Cheese Castle. The first time I ever came to Wisconsin was 12 years ago with my then girlfriend, now my wife. We made our stop at the Wisconsin Cheese Castle. So every time we come back, we got to stop at the Wisconsin Cheese Castle. But it's good to be here, and we love the state. Other local reporters, ma'am.
Hi, Megan Marshall with Spectrum News. This is the second endorsement from a local law enforcement here in Wisconsin. Tell me why that's so important to you in your campaign.
Well, I think it speaks to the fact that law enforcement knows who's on their side, right? Donald Trump has been endorsed by so many law enforcement organizations across the country, but now 2 in the state of Wisconsin just the past week, because they know that Donald Trump is the one who's actually going to stand up for them and support them. I mean, look, we have got real problems in law enforcement recruitment in this country, and certainly right here in the state of Wisconsin. A lot of our police departments are underfunded and under-resourced. We don't have enough cops to do the job of keeping us safe. And then on top of that, we've got Mexican drug cartels operating as far north as Kenosha, Wisconsin, because we have a border czar, Kamala Harris, who refuses to do her job. These guys just want common sense back, right? Some of them are Democrats, some of them are Republicans. Maybe they agree or disagree with us on tax policy, but they agree with us that we've got to have common sense public safety. And if we don't have public safety, we don't have anything. You can't build a business. You can't go to work. You can't take your kids on a walk in your neighborhood without public safety. Public safety is the foundation of having a good country, and the police of Wisconsin know Donald Trump is the public safety candidate. A few more locals, ma'am, yes.
Yeah, I'm Hannah Hilliard with Channel 12 from up in Milwaukee. Obviously, there is a big event happening not too far away from here over in Chicago. Did you catch any of the DNC tonight, or last night? If you did, what were your immediate thoughts?
Well, my immediate thoughts were all the people booing. I agree with them. That was my response to it, was boo. I watched little bits and pieces of it. We were out campaigning yesterday, so I got home to Cincinnati a little on the later side yesterday, so I watched some of it. I will say just the contrast between the public safety policies of Kamala Harris and Donald Trump is really striking, and it's almost a joke to me that they held it in Chicago, which has become the murder capital of the United States of America thanks to very failed Democrat leadership. I mean, I believe last weekend in the city of Chicago, you had something like 40 shootings and 17 people who lost their lives. That is something that we would not accept in a third world country, much less in one of our beautiful, great American cities like Chicago. And my little theory about why they decided to have the convention in Chicago is, Tim Walz has been going around saying that he served in war, and maybe they did it in Chicago so that he could actually accurately say that he visited a combat zone. Because Chicago, I mean, look, Chicago has violent crime statistics that actually mirror, again, third world, highly violent countries. Again, public safety is the birthright of every citizen in this country. Poor or rich, black or white, nobody should be growing up in a community where you have a murder rate like that. And I think it is a good contrast between the policies of Kamala Harris that promote violent crime and the criminals who do it, and the policies of Donald J. Trump who promote peace, who promote prosperity, and want to throw the violent criminals behind bars. That's what Donald J. Trump wants to do, and I share that. What? Anybody else here? Ma'am? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, this is
Hey.
Stephanie Quirk with Fox 6 News in Milwaukee. Kind of going off the DNC, Vice President Kamala Harris is paying a visit to Milwaukee tonight, holding a rally. Do you have any response to that?
No response. Look, I mean, Kamala Harris is going to run the campaign that she runs. I would say that I wish that she would do what I'm doing right now, which is talk to the media and actually answer some tough questions. I mean, if you think what I'm doing here right now, what am I asking? The question I'm asking is for the fine people gathered to vote for me to be their vice president of the United States. What an awesome responsibility and what an incredible thing that I'm asking them to do. Now, Kamala Harris is going around asking people to be their president of the United States, but she won't answer a single tough question, and she won't interact with the American people unless there's a teleprompter standing between them and her. And I think that's crazy. And I think that what the media has got to start doing is it's got to start saying, look, if Kamala Harris is not going to stand and answer some tough questions, we're going to stop giving her this fake fawning coverage. Demand that she do what any president has had to do, which is answer some tough questions. But look, her argument, I can't get over this, because you watch her rallies, and Kamala's argument is something that I could not stay with a straight face. She stands there and says on day one, she's going to tackle the housing affordability crisis in our country. On day one, she's going to tackle the grocery affordability crisis in our country, and they are crises. Well, Kamala, day one was 3.5 years ago. You've been the vice president for 3.5 years. What the hell have you been doing for all that time? So for the people in Milwaukee who are going to go to her rally or going to listen to what she says, I just ask them, if she has such good ideas for how to bring down the cost of food and groceries and housing, why doesn't she do it now? She's the vice president. Not talk about what she's going to do in 6 months. Do it now, because she's got the power right now. Thank you. Any other locals? Okay, we'll do a couple nationals, and then we got to hit the road. Go ahead, ma'am.
Senator Merrill Cornfield from the Washington Post. I have a policy question for
Great.
you. We don't want to talk about policy? So my question is, before you were in the Senate, there was the vote on the Violence Against Women Act. And one of the hiccups with negotiating that bill was, should people who are convicted of stalking be able to possess firearms? What do you think about that?
Well, look, I think that we certainly don't want violent criminals to have access to weapons. And that includes people, I think, who have been convicted of stalking. But I think it's important to say convicted. And what a lot of those of us who are pro-Second Amendment, what we don't want is, we don't want somebody to have their gun rights taken away when they haven't actually been in a court of law, right? Whether it's a First Amendment right, a Second Amendment right, any right, you are entitled to due process in this country. And so the criticisms that I've seen of that are not that certainly people who are convicted of a crime, they should not be able to carry a firearm. But people who have not gone through due process, they still have their rights, whether First Amendment, Second Amendment, whether walking around liberty or other rights. And I think that's an important distinction here between our approach and the Democrats' approach. We don't believe in the Republican Party that you should take people's rights away unless they've gone through a court of law.
Hi, Senator. Kit Maher, CNN. I know Donald Trump has been reported. She's one of the good CNN reporters. There's like two of them. She's okay. Back to my question. So Donald Trump has enlisted the help of Tulsi Gabbard to prep for his debate. I'd like to know how you were prepping for a debate with Tim Walz, who has described himself as a bad debater. Who's helping you, and how are you prepping?
Well, I found a good friend from back home who embellishes and lies a lot, and I'm having him stand in for Tim Walz. That's what we're doing during our debate. But look, all kidding aside, what we're going to do is we're going to focus a lot on policy, right? The way that I'm trying to prepare is to try to make sure that we're prepared to answer the American people's questions on how we're going to make their lives better, how we're going to make their communities safer, how we're going to bring back prosperity and low prices to the American economy. And we're going to focus on policy. And then obviously we're going to answer whatever questions the moderators have. That's how we're focusing. And by the way, just on President Trump, we have to remember, Tulsi Gabbard was a Democratic congresswoman just a few years ago. She ran against Kamala Harris back in 2020, and now she is firmly behind the Trump-Vance ticket. We're actually the ticket that is supported by common sense people across the spectrum. I think Tulsi Gabbard, you saw her. I mean, she basically ended Kamala's campaign on the debate stage, so she's a hell of a debater. But she's also one of these people who believes in some common sense things like we shouldn't send America's sons and daughters off to fight in stupid wars, right? Amen to that, Tulsi. And I think it's really telling that the campaign that has brought a lot of Democrats and Republicans and independents together, it's the campaign of Donald J. Trump. And that's very important. We'll do one more question. Sir.
Hey, Senator. Zach Alishak, Washington Examiner. I had a question. Last year, you got a lot of attention for visiting striking UAW members in Ohio. Last night, Sean Fain attacked you at the DNC and Donald Trump. Do you believe the party's going to attract more union voters this cycle, and kind of what's the strategy to do that?
Look, I think that my message to Sean Fain and any other leader of the labor movement would be, who is the campaign? Which campaign is actually going to protect the jobs of American workers, union and non-union alike? It's the campaign of Donald J. Trump. So sign up, get involved, and support the candidate that's actually going to protect your jobs. Now, Sean Fain, he'll go on TV and say that a majority of his membership is going to actually back Donald Trump. Why are a majority of auto workers going to back Donald Trump? The same reason a majority of American manufacturers across the spectrum are going to back Donald Trump, because he's the one who wants to protect their job. He's the one who's saying, if the Chinese want to use slave labor and then import stuff into our country, we're going to put tariffs on the stuff they make with slave labor, and we're going to protect the jobs of American workers. When Kamala Harris says she stands for the United Auto Workers, and yet she supports EV mandates that's going to have every single one of their jobs destroyed and shipped to China, because it's China that's making most of the EVs. In America, we're still making a lot of gas-powered cars. I think people ought to be able to drive whatever the hell they want, because this is the United States of America. We don't tell people what to do. But importantly, if we don't tell people what to do, they're going to be able to buy cars that are made in America with American workers doing the jobs. And that is why I think we're going to win the majority of union and non-union workers in this country. Whatever Sean Fain says, if he listens to his membership, they're behind Donald J. Trump. And, of course, there are a lot of other workers who aren't just auto workers who are exactly the same position. All right. What I'll say here finally to wrap up, thanks to the media for asking a few questions, is just God bless you guys. Thank you for coming out. I get so much joy and so much energy out of being here and meeting people and getting to talk to people and seeing what's going on in this country. We're going to win this race in November, and it's going to start right here in Wisconsin. So what I'd ask all of you is, look, we've got 76 days to this campaign, and early voting probably starts, 30 days early in Wisconsin? Get out there. Get your neighbors to the polls. Get your family members to the polls. Knock on doors. Make phone calls. We are going to win this race if we get out there and vote. So God bless you all. Thank you for being here. Let's go vote, Wisconsin. Let's go win in November, and let's take this country back and do it the right way. God bless you all. Thank you so much for being here.